Well, we've seen a number of different impacts of inflation and the fluctuations in our markets recently. And among the different industries that is affecting is the real estate industry, where previously we were seeing quite an advantageous market for those selling their homes. Now, with inflation, with lowering prices and where the markets are at, it's actually shifting toward more of a buyer's market. Here to talk to us about that is Frank Locricchio. He is a broker and the owner of Realty Executives Hometown, joining us on the Megacast. Thank you for being with us.
Good morning, Tyler. How are you?
Good. How are you doing, Frank?
Good, good. Yeah,
Appreciate having.
definitely. Go
Yeah,
ahead. Sir.
appreciate having you on. So, what are some? Let's go through some of the factors that have changed in the last 6 months to a year or so that have kind of shifted this market from being where it was for the bulk of the pandemic and even a little bit before the pandemic, being more of a seller's market, to now being more advantageous for those that are actually looking to buy a home.
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of us have seen this coming for a little bit with inflation rising and the talk of interest rates going up. And now we're seeing the ramifications of those things. And it's created some opportunities for buyers. So some of these are challenging, but some of these are actually good things for buyers. Um, Biggest thing right now is we're still seeing very low inventory. So low inventory is a challenge across the industry right now. But what we're seeing is buyers having um, more opportunity to negotiate. So as things keep going through the system of change, when we start seeing more inventory um, and buyers having the opportunity to negotiate, I think you'll start seeing the pricing get leveled off.
Yeah, and in terms of predicting that, so many people, I would imagine, in the housing market right now, whether they're on the side of a buyer and they're looking to purchase a home, or they're looking to sell their home, maybe downsize or capitalize on the equity they've made in their home over their time owning it. I would imagine that, given where the market is at, given the state of inflation in the U.S. and around the world at this time, many are waiting to be a little bit more, are looking to be a little bit more patient before they go into the market from one side or the other. What, in terms of the experts that are in the market, yourself and others and your colleagues in real estate, is there any sort of barometer, any sort of forecast right now for when that market improvement may happen, depending on what side you're on?
Yeah, depending on what side you're on, let's say you're a seller at this point. What has happened is hit the peak pricing. I think we're going to start seeing some of that pricing come down. The challenge becomes when you were selling at a peak price, you were also possibly purchasing at a peak price. So sellers still have good chance to get a very good value for their house, and then have the opportunity to turn around and still maybe get a better price on the house that they were going to purchased previously. So, again, it's the biggest challenge with sellers right now is um, there is none, right? We're still, very low inventory. We're starting to see the inventory sit a little longer. So sellers are going to have to start negotiating, but they don't have as much competition as even they had last year. So,
Yeah, obviously you work in real estate. You're a broker and the owner of Realty Executives Hometown, and so you're on that seller's side. You're working with your clients to sell their homes. And so, what are you consulting your clients with at this time, or your properties with at this time, to make that sale a little bit more attractive to buyers, given that there is such low inventory on the market, as you mentioned?
yeah, sellers have one chance to make a first impression. So to make sure the property is ready to present to the potential buyers, make sure that all your major mechanicals have been looked at or have been addressed. Make sure that all the little things like light plugs and fixtures and trim and they're all cleaned up and painted. Make sure your landscaping is in good condition and the house is ready to show because you never know when you have the right buyer come in the property. You don't want to make a bad first impression.
We're joined by Frank Locricchio. He is the broker and owner at Realty Executives Hometown, joining us on today's edition of the Megacast. In terms of resources, where do you suggest people go to learn more about what they can do from either angle of the market, whether they are looking to buy a home through a realtor like yourself, or are looking to sell their home with the help of a realtor? What are some of the tools that are available through your business to help them make better decisions in that regard and put themselves in the best position in this market?
Yeah, we have some great resources online, but I think the first step is to reach a professional. a local agent, broker, and let's consult. If you're on the buying side of the equation, let's see what your money really can buy right now. Let's set up reasonable expectations of a home or style or type price range. Let's get you in contact with a professional mortgage lender, get your pre-approvals in order, get yourself lined up. Because if you are going to make that jump to start looking at properties or purchase property, you want to be able to do that as soon as you find the right property. You might not have a lot of time. As for sellers, we have some great resources on how to get your property ready to sell, taking the steps to walk through the house and making sure all the little things are tightened up. So we have some great resources on our website, reallyexecutives.com, that'll give you either side of the equation. And there's also a great calculator so a client can figure out possibly what they could afford in today's market.
And more information can be found on their website. We'll navigate over there in just a moment. Their website, realtyexecutives.com. That is realtyexecutives.com for more information on Realty Executives from Frank Locricchio and his team. Again, that's realtyexecutives.com for more info. And Frank, you're in the business of getting people in homes, but doing that in a way that is most advantageous to them. So for the buyers on that side of the market right now, you mentioned earlier on, there's given that there is such low inventory, it is now more of a buyer's market. There is some leverage there to negotiate the prices of these homes, and or even at the very least, if you can't negotiate the price of the home, negotiate some of those closing costs and some additional things you can throw into that deal to put yourself in a better position when you do get into that home. What are you suggesting at this time to some of those that are looking to buy a home in terms of what they can leverage in some of these negotiations to really put themselves in a good position when they get into that home that they're looking at?
Yeah, obviously, prior it was very difficult to negotiate price or terms or repairs. Those are back on the table now. We're seeing the opportunity for buyers to negotiate seller concessions to help pay their closing costs and any mortgage expenses. We're seeing a lot of negotiating maybe after inspection to help with repairs. Uh, the other great thing we're seeing is lenders are now starting to get creative with financing programs that'll get a buyer into the property maybe at a lower rate for the first few years to make up for some expenses. But yeah, definitely a great opportunity for a buyer to negotiate a better deal with better terms and get into the property that maybe they couldn't have done that, 6 months ago. Now is the time if maybe you didn't have the 20% down, you can get some seller concessions from the sellers. You can negotiate the repairs you couldn't handle yourself. So it's a great opportunity for buyers right now. But they have to be prepared.
More information can be found and get in contact with Frank and his team at Realty Executives at realtyexecutives.com. Realtyexecutives.com for more information on all this. And in terms of sellers, being that they're in a buyer's market, there is that low inventory, and you're going to be going into some tough negotiations. What's some advice you have for those that are selling their homes to put themselves in the best position to get that home off their hands, get a good deal, but also work with these buyers? Because just as quickly as you can get into those negotiations, the leverage is on the side of the buyers.
Yeah, the biggest challenge for a seller right now is setting the listing price, right? They really need to work with an expert to come up with the best possible listing price so you're not outpricing yourself out of the market or underpricing yourself. You have to expect you're going to do some negotiating. So you have to find that, semi-aggressive price where you attract enough people to the property, be able to do a little bit of negotiating, but you're still getting top dollar in this market. Now, this market is different than it was 3 months ago. So be prepared. Your listing price is not a price to get over anymore. That's happening very seldom now. It's more of a price to get to. So having a reasonable expectation, you'll be able to sell your property, and then you'll probably have a better opportunity to buy something at a lower price on the other side. So expectations is really the big thing they have to set.
We're joined by Frank Locricchio, broker and owner at Realty Executives Hometown, on today's edition of the Megacast. More information on Frank and other Realty Executives locations across Michigan can be found at realtyexecutives.com, realtyexecutives.com for all that. And Frank, we talk about the impact of this market mostly being from inflation, and one of the results of inflation has been the rise in interest rates by the Federal Reserve and really across the board by banks, and so that affects certainly people's mortgages as they're buying these homes. What advice do you have for home buyers as they are getting into these new homes and getting into, in some cases, new mortgages, or even those just refinancing, to put their best foot forward in those situations so that when the market does adjust, and hopefully at some point here soon is a little bit more favorable in terms of interest rates, that they're not stuck with a much bigger bill than they need?
Yeah. First, for buyers, I think don't get super enticed by a rate you think is really good. You want to look at the overall picture of expenses for that rate, the closing costs associated with it. So try to look at APR, which is all the closing costs plus the rate over the term of the loan. So that's one key thing. The other great thing, like I mentioned before, is lenders are starting to get creative. We're seeing the adjustable rate mortgage back out. Uh, Adjustable rate mortgages will give you initial low rate for a period of time, and then they will adjust up or down depending on where the market's at that time. So those are great programs. If your income's going to increase in 5 or 6 years, or you think you're not going to be in the property more than a certain period of time, you can get a lower rate today. We're also seeing other programs like a 2-1 buy down, which is a really interesting program that we just ran across, where the seller can put money in account for a potential buyer to pay the rate down for the next 2 years. So they get a really low introductory first year, which is probably less than 2% over the current rate. And then the second year it goes up 1%. And then the third year you're back to market. But there's an opportunity to have initial first few years at a really good price. And I think at the end of the day, it shouldn't matter about rate. It's about what you can afford monthly. So let's look at that monthly payment. So you definitely want to talk to an expert and make sure that you're comfortable with the monthly payment, because at the end of the day, the rate, 7, 8% we might see at some point. Those will come down at some point in the future, but you don't want to miss the opportunity to buy because you're scared of the rate. Let's look at the payment associated with that.
RealtyExecutives.com is the website to get in contact with Frank Locricchio and his team here locally, as well as other Realty Executives locations across Michigan and the U.S. Frank, another couple minutes with you before we'll say goodbye. Any other lasting advice you'd like to give to those on the housing market at this time from your perspective as a realtor, either those buying or those, of course, looking to sell their home in this competitive market?
Yeah, let's start with sellers. It's still a great time to sell. You still have a good opportunity. There's not that many sellers out there, so you don't have as much competition. And traditionally, the market starts slowing up this time of year, so you have even less competition. And the buyers that are out there, they're serious. So good time to keep your property for sale and get on the market. As far as buyers go, we're seeing, again, a lot of creative financing. Buyers that didn't have a lot of down payment now can get in the market with seller concessions. And I think for both parties, there's good reason to be in the housing market. And again, rate is possibly a short-term thing we're going to see go up and eventually hopefully come down a little bit. But I think the days of the 2 or 3% mortgage, those are over. But we had a great housing market before those days came. So just setting up realistic expectations, talking to a local professional will help you through those processes, and you'll be in a good position to buy or sell.
RealtyExecutives.com is where you can go to get in contact with Frank Locricchio and his team locally, as well as other Realty Executives locations across Michigan. Frank, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tyler.